Hey people of YouTube, it's Jack Punkington and my twin brother here, Jacob. Today we're gonna have a special talk video where I talk about music. Last time I did one of these, we had Chris Frioff and we talked about 80s metal. Today we're just gonna do a couple questions and we're gonna talk mainly on like heavier black metal, I want to say. What would you call Cannibal Corpse? Black metal?
Consider him black metal. I mean, death metal.
Death metal, black metal, because he's like the expert on that, the local expert kind of. So, what better way to talk about death metal and black metal with the expert? Alright, first, give me your full opinion on how you think black metal has progressively changed and how death metal has changed over the past 20 years.
Well, for black metal, I'd have to say, during its origins, like back during the whole first wave of Norwegian black metal, it was a lot more raw. Whereas today, it's like been more or less accepted that to have a more polished production and not sound so raw, as if it was recorded on like a kid's recording set. And as for death metal, it's gotten a lot more technically innovative from like back when old school death metal bands like Possessed, Death, Morbid Angel, bands like that.
Now, would you say that black metal is becoming more mainstream, or like that the genre itself is somewhat selling out to the moral demographic that we have out today?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily selling out. It's more of that a lot of the old school black metal bands are experimenting with new things. Like Satyricon, their new album isn't exactly black metal. It's more along the lines of traditional heavy metal-ish, but it's still rooted in black metal. But I suppose you could say it's getting closer to mainstream acceptance.
Okay, now do you see that as a bad thing, or do you see it as a good thing that people may be becoming more acceptant of this genre, or that it's going to, or if it does become more accepted, it's going to lose its touch and its spit and polish, and it'll be kind of more like the poppy scene, how that's changed, and how even some punk scenes have changed over the last few years? Do you think it's going to turn into something that most purists won't want, or something that's going to be more broad that maybe a purist may not like love but wouldn't hate, and we'd get more people into it that may not know what it is?
I honestly think that it's not going to change much at all, other than that, like, as newer bands gain more mainstream acceptance, they'll be probably more encouraged to incorporate new influences from more mainstream genres, whereas there's still going to be bands that are going to try to keep it as brutal as possible, just like old school bands.
Okay. Now, in my last few videos, you guys will remember this, I talked about how you cannot blame metalheads or any real music genre, especially metal, because it's been targeted by Christians and by other socialist groups or anything to make it more, it's satanic, it's evil, it's pornographic, it's just vile. Now, I understand that there is a place for satanic metal. There is bands out there like that, like Gorgoth. That's the only one I can think of right now. But do you think that it's right to blame or even call all metal satanic? Or to judge the whole spectrum of metal as a genre on one subgenre as satanic metal? I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm saying that satanic metal has its own place. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I would agree that it has its own place, and that the whole like spectrum of metal shouldn't be like subjected as satanic based off that genre, because not all metal bands have satanic ideals, whereas there's like the Christian metal subgenre and other bands like that. And like Black Sabbath weren't exactly Satanists, and they pretty much launched heavy metal, along with Led Zeppelin and Count Cream, I suppose.
Now there's actually a big debate on that, on who is the true father, the true creator of heavy metal, that it was Led Zeppelin, that it was Deep Purple, that it was Black Sabbath, that it was Jimi Hendrix was even credited for it. Who do you really think fits the bill of the true godfather of just metal as a genre?
I would have to say there's not one musician in particular, because there was Jimi Hendrix and there was Cream, and they were huge influences on like Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin, but they weren't exactly like metal as we know it today. They were like proto-metal, I suppose you could call it. In my opinion, Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin are what really launched it, although Led Zeppelin was rooted a lot more in rock than they were metal, so that might be why Black Sabbath are considered the godfathers.
Alright. I've gotten in debates with that before, and I can see both sides of the argument. Black Sabbath was called evil, but yet it had that really, because it used a lot of Tony Iommi's stuff. He used the tritone, which is the devil's da-na-na kind of sound, where Jimmy Page, he wrote really dark, full riffs, but they never crossed that line, and they were more melodic, but in a I don't want to say poppy, but in a more classic way, and not as innovated. Like, Zeppelin was innovative for sure, but not as metal-oriented or as more distorted as Black Sabbath. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I would agree with that, because Led Zeppelin, in their own right, influenced a lot of bands with Jimmy Page and Robert Plant and the rest of the band's playing style. But Black Sabbath is the band that really like started the dark sound in metal. Their influences can be traced to grunge, stoner metal, and stoner rock, doom metal, and gothic metal in some cases. Whereas Led Zeppelin, you couldn't really find their influence in all too many gothic metal bands.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna ask you a few questions about how you feel, what do you find as, I know thrash metal has the big four of Slayer, Anthrax, and Megadeth and Metallica. What do you think are the top four black metal and death metal bands that should be credited for being maybe not the best of the best, but the ones that stand out the most, that they don't get or deserve but aren't recognized with?
It's a difficult question. For death metal, I'd have to say Morbid Angel, Possessed, are big names that don't exactly get as much credit as I think they should. And as for black metal, I don't think there's really any bands that could fit into a big four. There was too many. They were just too good to be put into that small of a box.
Alright, and now, as a teenager as you are, and as most of my demographic who watches my show is, I know this is a weird question, but try to stay with me on this. If you were a parent, and your child was your age, and came up to you and said, I want to get this album by Death, or I want to get this album by Black Sabbath, or by Cannibal Corpse, would you take it as, my child is now possessed, my child is now evil, or would you take it as, this kid's got some good music taste, and yeah, let's go to the record store right now? How would you kind of orient that as a parent? Because I know you listen to that, and would you recommend that to your kids? If you had kids and you were older, would you recommend that to open their horizons?
I wouldn't treat it as though they were possessed, because that's kind of a Christian ideal, whereas I'm not really fond of that, so I wouldn't really consider them possessed for asking for, say, a Morbid Angel or Death album. I would say go for it, and I'd probably buy them the album, because they're broadening their music horizons, and I'd rather have them broaden their horizons than just stay in a contained box of pop and rock, when they could be listening to all the subgenres of metal that have developed throughout the years that you could be limiting by telling them no.
Alright. Now, guys, you may have seen a couple videos ago that I have posted a couple riffs I've wrote, and I will be posting more, and they would say titles like New Stuff from Garage Kings or New Riffs I've wrote for the band. Well, as it stands, Garage Kings is no more. And yes, it's a sad day, I know. It just gotten to the point where it was very unstable. Me and the other member weren't able to get our schedules met up to practice, so we had to call it quits. But there is good news. There's good news for you all out there, especially those who actually enjoyed those riffs. Those riffs will be used. Those riffs will be coming out hopefully in the next few months, or 4 months hopefully at the most, with a new band and a new title. The band is called Radioactive Rebirth, and I'd like to introduce you to the rhythm guitar player / secondary lead / screamer of that band. Now, we're not going to set our genre just yet. A lot of our influences will be all over the spectrum, and I don't think it's fair right now to set our genre. Although we do have a lot of ideas, it's nowhere near to the point where we can say, we are this. I am going to give you guys a few suggestions to look up for bands, and always leave us band cover idea suggestions you want us to try out. Some of our influences are Red Fang, Death, Metallica, Megadeth, Morbid Angel, Cannibal Corpse, and Anthrax. And definitely, last but not least, Slayer. Now, I'm going to let you guys off with that note. Comment any suggestions you have. I'd also love to hear your opinions on what we discussed today about black and death metal. And if you want to hear another topic video about like a discussion like this, please let me know. And if you would like to be in one, also let me know. I have no problems with that. I'll talk to you all guys later. This is Jack Punkington and my twin brother,
Jacob.
signing out. See you guys later.